morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a little bit of a look at the very first ever Galarian Slowking card. Now, we did see Galarian Slowbro. That came around in Darkness Ablaze, although just a V, not a VMAX yet. Here, we have got Galarian Slowking and Galarian Slowking VMAX. Yeah, that's right, making debut with a VMAX. How wonderful. Now, our translation here comes from the lovely Antoine Boulet, which you've heard that a lot, and honestly, you're going to hear it a bunch more, because Antoine's lovely and hooks us up with translations. I am learning Japanese as fast as I can, but unfortunately, it's not always fast enough. I think I'm a little way away from translating brand new novel cards by myself. So what have we got here? Well, Galarian Slowking V. We've got 220 HP, which is honestly about right. That's pretty much as high as we get. That is high for a Pokemon V. We see Zamazenta comes in at 230, and there are some others that are kind of ridiculous, and then obviously you've got Wailord that's kind of off on his own, doing his own thing. But 220 for your standard Pokemon V is about as high as we get, so this is cool. We've got a retreat cost of 3, which on the one hand is really annoyingly high. On the other hand, we've got the Stadium card, Night City, Dark City, one of them, which gives free retreat to basic Darkness Pokemon. There we go, Dark City. And we've got Hiding Darkness Energy that will give free retreat to Darkness Pokemon. So, I don't really care. If we want to get out of the active, we're going to be able to retreat. We've then got a weakness to fighting, and I really don't like this. Because on the one hand, it shares a weakness with stuff like Eternatus and Pikachu and Zekrom, which are already really good. And on the other hand, we're just about to get those Urshifu that look really good. So we don't really want to be sharing a weakness with... Sorry, being weak to them, so yeah. Not loving it. Being Darkness type does mean you hit weakness on a few things here and there, like Oricorio, for instance. And it does mean you got Black Market Prism Star, so there's some tricks coming in, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be alright. But what does it do? Well, the first attack for 1 colourless energy lets you discard a card from your hand, and if you do, draw 3 cards. And this sounds kind of uninspiring, but actually, if you need to have an attack to draw some cards, and you're willing to use a multiple prize Pokemon in order to do so, and yes, I'm well aware that people are not always going to be willing to, this is good. We really do not see many Pokemon, at least basic Pokemon, that actually let you draw 3 cards. It's not something we see often at all. We do see it on EVV, but the problem is that EVV doesn't really have anything else going for it, though the VMAX is coming, so, you know, maybe in the not-too-distant future. And we see it on Hitmontop from Vivid Voltage, which is alright. Lickitung from Ultra Prism, which has rotated out and didn't do it for 1 energy anyway. And that's your list, ladies and gentlemen. That's your list. So actually, if you're talking about a Pokemon drawing 3 cards, you can use Eevee, but Eevee's a little bit of a problem because you don't really want to do anything else with Eevee. You've got Hitmontop, which to be fair is exactly the same attack, and it is a single prize basic and a colourless energy, but again, you might not want to attack with it. So I suppose what I'm saying is if you just want the attack for setup, use Hitmontop. But if you want it as I can set up and I can retreat easily and I've got other attacks, this ain't bad. Discard a card from your hand. Maybe you discard an energy to try and accelerate with Turbo Patch or something like that. Draw 3 cards is good. I wouldn't play Galarian Slowking for the setup attack, but if I'm playing it anyway, I like the setup attack. As for the other attack, we got 1 Darkness, 1 colourless energy. At the end of your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon will be knocked out. Oh. The thing is, we've seen attacks like this before. And unfortunately, when we saw attacks like this before, they did not end up being quite as good as we might have hoped. which is genuinely a little bit sad. So, for instance, the Absol from Guardians Rising, you put all energy from this Pokemon to your hand, and at the end of your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon will be knocked out. And this was an Absol that was absolutely... I did that genuinely accidentally then, but I'm a little proud of myself that I did. It's like my brain's working overtime even if I'm not really going for it. Good work, brain. It never worked. It was payable, but it did not work. We never got it working. This is the exact same attack cost, although you do get to keep the energy on the Pokemon, which is nice, but it never really does very much, unfortunately, and that's a little bit sad. Now, I should mention at this stage that you are a single strike Pokemon, so if you want to get the second energy on there really quickly, don't forget we've got Houndoom, which will accelerate a single strike energy onto you. Now, single strike energy actually lets you do an extra 20 damage, which is awesome, but you're not doing any damage for the meantime, and remember, the rule has always been that you need to do damage to add damage, so it will just do no damage. So, actually, yeah, I love this attack, but it's really hard to stop your opponent getting out the active. They're going to be able to retreat or switch or something like that. I love the attack, but I really don't think we're actually going to be able to get it working, which is a little bit sad. Now, if you're playing in an online tournament and we've got open deck lists and you know that your opponent is out of switching options and you know you're going to be able to get this working, oh my goodness, yes. But I don't feel good about how often you're going to be able to get this working, all right? I'm sorry. But the good news is we do have Galarian Slowking VMAX. Now we go up to 320 HP, which is not as high as we've seen, but it's okay. Same retreat cost of 3, same weakness to fighting, same darkness typing, and 1 attack. For 2 energy, 10 damage, your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned. Put 12 damage counters instead of 1 on that Pokemon between turns. Yes. Absolutely yes. Because you see, this is a kind of thing that's going to work very, very nicely indeed. And, you know, you're talking poison Pokemon here, right? Remember that Galarian Slowbro had an ability that poisoned. And on the one hand, this is actually weirdly similar to the first attack. As in the one on the Pokemon V, because essentially if they don't get out the active, they're being knocked out. But the big, gigantic difference here is that even if they do switch out the active, they are taking a significant amount of damage. I mean, minimum 130. And I say minimum 130 because we're talking poison and we're talking single strike Pokemon. We can do better. So let's say you've got a single strike energy on there from Houndoom, which has a decent chance you will because it searches the deck and it's really good. Now it's 30 damage plus 12 for poison, that's 150. But maybe you've got an Emboar in play, and Emboar lets you do an extra 30 damage. Maybe you've got some Toxicroak in play, the ones that mean that your opponent's poison damage goes up by an extra 2 damage counters between turns. So 1 Toxicroak is 14 damage counters, 2 is 16, etc, etc. And maybe what you're actually doing here is a redonkulous amount of damage. And if you can get, say, 2 Toxicroak out, then there's 16 damage counters between turns, that's 320. Add the 10 damage that you did is 330, which means only gigantic things like Eternatus will survive, and even then a single strike energy will guarantee that you actually did get the KO all along. And here's what's amazing. They get KO'd coming into your turn, which means you then get to put the poison on a new Pokemon. If they get KO'd going into your opponent's turn, that's not a good thing, because they then get a new Pokemon and that Pokemon's not taking damage coming into your turn and it makes your life more difficult. But if you're doing like 16 damage counters of poison between turns, which I think is a sweet spot here, about the only multiple prize Pokemon you're KOing is something like Dedenne. But pretty much all your tag teams, your VMAXs, your Vs, etc., they are all between like 180 and 330, or at least a vast majority of them, which means they're all in that sweet spot where they're getting KO'd by poison coming into your turn, and that's why I love this. Yes, there are going to be plenty of turns where your opponent just switches out of it, and that's fine. They're going to switch out of it, but they're going to have taken, 16, 17 damage counters, something along those lines. They're going to have taken enough that it's like, ha 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 ha. But the thing is, it's not actually always going to happen that they get out the active. Sure, there'll be turns they can switch and turns they retreat, and there'll be turns where they don't have the resources. There will be turns where you play a reset stamp to put them down to a very small hand late in the game, and then do this. And you're going to be getting really cheeky KOs here. I really like this. I do think the 12 damage counters, as weird as this sounds, is a little too low. Because, 12 damage counters, even with a single strike energy, means that you're essentially doing 270. And 270 is fine for Mewtwo and Mew. And it's fine for Reshiram and Charizard, although you will be giving them a big outrage attack in the meantime, which you might not want to do. But it's not going to work for Arcusnauga and Palkia. You're going to be a little bit short, because essentially you hit 120 twice, which is 240, plus the 10 base, plus the single strike energy is 270. It's not quite enough. But as soon as you start adding on a couple of Toxicroak here, this can get into truly ridiculous territory very quickly. I'm going to go ahead and give this 4 Wassies. The V has got a decent attack in terms of an emergency. You've got a nice little setup attack, and then you've got redonkulous damage, and it's little things like having Houndoom turning this into an essentially single energy attacker that really make me think highly about this. But I'd like to know how you think about it. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.